everyone. This is Pradeep from Sydney signing on to episode number 12 of GCC. And what has changed since last Saturday? For one, Sydney is now into summertime, which means I am starting this call at the midnight 12 a.m. in Sydney. But that's okay because the problem is going to get even worse in November when US starts changing or ending summertime. But let's look at it one step at a time. What I'm excited about today is, number one, presenting a range of alumni from 2019 to 1967. 1967 was the second batch, and 2019 is the second latest batch. So what is the value proposition of these two extremes? It will be very, very interesting to hear that. Number two, what I'm really looking forward to is introducing to you a fabulous alumni who has been making a mark in the new normal. And why do I call that? Because all of us know that the times we are living in are very unique kind of times. Not only technology has become ever prevalent, but the focus on environmental, social, and governance, or ESG for short, has become very, very high. Something that we thought that the environment is, which we could easily leave for our kids and for our grandkids, is staring us in the face now. So it will be lovely to present an alumni who's not only achieved some great heights in professional and in business, but also his sense of values in the new normal. And lastly, but not the least, as I've been talking about, that this GCC, I'll be muting everybody, and please, the guy who will be speaking can unmute himself. Let me first go and mute everybody. And coming back to the third aspect for GCC session today, GCC is creating a platform, a value-driven platform where alumni from one part of the world can connect with any other part of the world. Now, as I also mentioned earlier, that when we kicked off GCC, there was no database. We had, the alumni office had less than 1,000 names of international alumni. And we all know that the overseas alumni must be at least about 15 to 20,000 in number. So we are starting from ground zero. So in building a community, there are three steps. Number one is growing the community. That means, building up a database. Number two is engaging with the community, which is what we are doing at the moment, but this is just one of the touch points of the engagement. And number three is going into value creation. And one of the ways, looking at the wide ranges of value propositions of alumni from 1966, to be precise, to 2020, is to form special interest groups. So today we have a look at how one of the special interest groups, what are their thoughts of undertaking this journey. So let's kick off. And the first item on the agenda, I am delighted to present to you Sumant Sinha, IIT Delhi alumni, IIM Calcutta alumni. He's a TAS alumni. For those of you who still know what TAS is, TAS used to be called Tata Administrative Services. He's been the CFO for the Aditya Birla Group. He's been in so many different positions all over. And then he decided to chuck up his boots and started a renewable energy company, which is the largest in India, is Nasdaq listed with a market cap of close to 5 billion. But more importantly, I was absolutely, I really loved the values that he had. So please give a round of applause to Sumant. Sumant, are you there?
Yes, I'm very much here, Pradeep. Thank you so much for your kind words.
So, Sumant, I am, the last chat I had, the combination of your values and what you achieved is absolutely fabulous. I want to know more about how your journey has been. How did you I know that you went to IIM Calcutta, and I also know that, TAS used to recruit mostly from IIM Ahmedabad at that time. I know that you went to TAS, but along the way, there seemed to be a whole lot of crosses and crosses and where you are today. So tell us about what happened.
Yeah, Pradeep, thank you so much. And look, it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you. So yeah, as I was telling you earlier, my life has been full of zigs and zags, with seeming little correlation between one step and another. But in some interesting way, it all led up to what I'm doing right now. I was an investment banker in New York and London for about 10, 11 years. Then I joined the Indian corporate sector and I was running finance for the Aditya Birla Group. Um, and then a little bit by some degree of chance that I got asked to run a company called Suzlon, which was an Indian wind turbine manufacturing company. And the reason I accepted that job, even though Suzlon was a smaller company at the time, was because back in 2007, when I was looking at this opportunity, and I started looking at the whole area of climate change seriously at that time, I realized that this was going to be a very big issue in the years to come. And it was fairly clear to me that it was a good area to spend the remaining parts of one's career in. I did not have at that point a clear-cut thought process about what I might be able to do in it, but I did have the desire eventually to go off and become an entrepreneur and do something on my own. And I knew I had to find something that was relatively early stage. And it seemed to me that climate change was an early stage area. And getting in and running Suzlon gave me an opportunity to get into the sector. And that is why I took the decision to join that company, and that's how I got in. And literally after I joined, the global financial crisis happened, and it became very difficult for renewables in general. But the reason everything, as I was saying earlier, came and sort of contributed to my decision was because having been a banker, our sector is a capital intensive sector, and so we need to raise a lot of capital. And in my company, for example, we've raised almost $8-9 billion of debt and about $2-3 billion of equity. A lot of that was possible because I had been a capital markets banker in the past. So that background actually helped quite substantially. Secondly, being in India, operating in India, at least I had familiarity with how the Indian market operates and how the government works, how the corporate sector works. So that knowledge also helped substantially. And being in the Birla Group, as a CFO, I got a chance to see how corporates actually truly create value. As a banker, you don't get to see that. But as a corporate person, you get to see how you invest capital, how you take investment decisions, and how you create strategy in the long run. And working with a very, I would say, an Indian promoter, which was Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla, and seeing his long-term vision and his long-term mindset, that also helped quite a lot. So it got me this ability to combine, let's say, Western capitalism with Indian capitalism. Okay, and
Yes.
combining the long-term views with the short-term value creation mindset. Okay, so and then Suzlon allowed me to layer onto that this knowledge of the sector, and so all of that came together in some strange way, and that is why when I started the company, I was a little bit better armed with some of this background than it might appear obvious at the time that you consider all the things that I have done.
But this is such a lovely way of putting it. That one is that at one end you are working with the likes of international financial institutions, and on the other hand you are working with a homegrown large conglomerate, and the kind of experience span it gave you. But I also want to pick up that after you also did your second master's at Columbia. So what were you very fond of studying, or what made you go down to Columbia again?
Well, I'm an IIT Delhi guy, right? So all of us have some facility in studying, and it's something that does come naturally to us. No, the reason I did a second master's at Columbia was because I had been obviously working at TAS at the time, but as we all know, a lot of our friends had gone overseas, and they were having very different kinds of experiences, getting a very different exposure to the world at large, and I wanted to get some part of that as well. And but I didn't want to do another MBA because I'd already done an MBA in India. I didn't want to do a PhD because I didn't want to become an academician. And so I was wondering what I could do. And I also needed a fellowship because, like I'm sure all the rest of you, I couldn't afford to pay my own tuition and all of that. And so I found this one course at Columbia, which was a master's in international affairs, but they allowed you to specialize in international finance. And so that's the only course I actually applied to. And I could have only gone if I'd got a fellowship. And they were nice enough to give me the fellowship. And so therefore, my bag and baggage got study leave from TAS. I didn't leave.
I see. I see.
Plan B. So I took study leave and then I went. And then, of course, once I got there, then, it became a job search. And then fortunately, I got a job in Citibank. And then I was
so let me now go to another part of your career when you started off this current company, ReNew Power. What visions did you have? Yes, it was nice to talk in terms of climate change, but you are talking of 2011, where it was not such a big issue with what it is now looking like as a full-blown issue. When you look at the floods in Germany, or you look at the fires in California, or you look at the high temperatures in British Columbia, or even the glaciers in India. So what did you have in your mind, and did you see that you're going to be a $5 billion listed Nasdaq company at that particular point in time in 2011?
No, of course I didn't see that, Pradeep. That was not at all my thinking at that point. I started the company. So you're right. I did see the fact that climate change would become a bigger issue in the future. Even back in 2010 and 2011, there was already talk about temperature change and carbon dioxide emissions, and the fact that we had to do something about it. And renewable energy was one way to deal with it. And the Indian government had put in place certain policies that encouraged companies like ours to get started. So there was a recognition even at that point that we had to do something. And fortunately, the Indian government in this one area was fairly proactive and very early in terms of its thought process. So it was quite forward-looking of the government at that point in time. And so there were certain policies in place in India that made it possible for companies like ours to get started. But when I started, Pradeep, I wasn't thinking about anything in the future. I was just thinking about the here and now of how do I raise capital? How do I hire people? Can I do this business or not? Because ultimately ours is a hardcore infrastructure business. We have to go out into the back of beyond areas, acquire land, build roads, then, take all of our heavy equipment like wind turbines or solar panels there, and then build in all of these areas. And you can imagine that in India, building in these areas, you have all sorts of local elements who come in and create problems. So dealing with all of that was really all that I was thinking about in the first 1 or 2 years, which was how do I get all of this done? Because I didn't actually come from a background of having done that. And so in some ways I had to prove to myself and to my shareholders, my investors, that I could do it. So in the beginning, in the first 2-3 years, I would say it was just about basic survival and basically being able to demonstrate that we could actually get projects done in India at a cost level and so on that we had committed to doing. And so it's really only that I was focused on. I mean, the fact that we became bigger really happened, I would say, 2015, 2016 onwards, that one started thinking more actively about the future and then thinking truly about what one could build and what value one could create.
So I find it very interesting that at one end, you were essentially, in the banking industry. Then you became a CFO, which is more again, looking at it from a financial perspective. And here we are talking of land acquisition in very rural areas and all the things that you see in Bollywood. And how has the journey been? Kind of, and like there comes a time when you are in survival mode. And there comes a time when you are in consolidation and growth mode. Has it been hunky-dory all the time?
No, not at all, Pradeep. Obviously not. We are operating an infrastructure business in India, and we're dealing a lot with the government. So there is, there is not a moment that you can really relax. And now we have a bunch of new competitors coming in as well, because the sector is suddenly becoming a lot bigger
Hot. Yeah.
and more attractive. So huge numbers of people are now coming into the sector as well. But fortunately, before that has happened, we've been able to build a reasonably good position for ourselves in terms of scale and size that hopefully allows us to compete in the years to come. But no, so it's been a lot of learning. It's been a lot of hard work. It's been a lot of going to the ground level and getting things done there. It's been a lot of problem solving. But I would say it's all been a lot of fun because it's all worked out reasonably okay so far. Had it not worked out, I wouldn't have been saying it was a lot of fun. But because it's worked out reasonably okay, I can look back and say, yeah, it's been interesting and so on. But Pradeep, the thing that really excites me is that now we've got a certain size of company. We've got a lot of cash flows that are coming in. Our EBITDA this year will be about $800 million. So we've become a good sized company. We'll have a lot of free cash flow. We've just through our listing raised close to $1 billion of capital. So we're fairly well funded. And now, as I look forward at the future, with all the things now that are happening around climate change and all the focus that is coming in, there clearly is a tremendous amount of growth that is going to happen in our sector. And just renewable energy is in India itself. While we have 100 gigawatts of installed capacity right now, the target is by the government of India to get to 450 gigawatts by 2030. So 4.5 times growth in literally 9 years. And that means that we have to add another 350 gigawatts, which is, by the way, equal to the size of the entire Indian power sector. So in the next 10 years, we have to replicate the entire Indian installed power sector in just 9 years in just renewable energy. So, and then it will continue to grow even more significantly after that. So that's a humongous opportunity, right? And the second thing that's happening is that there are new areas opening up, like green hydrogen, like storage, like the corporate market and so on. So all of those are also very exciting new opportunities. So frankly, for me, the excitement really lies in what we can do with ourselves in the future, not really looking back at the last 10 years and seeing where we've got to, which is great, of course, but really the opportunity of the future is what excites me now.
Fabulous. And you see, even more important when you read about the kind of coal shortages and the kind of, how the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy is happening. But at the same time, the investment is not there. So we are landing in the situation where we are at this particular point in time with a sudden upsurge in the global demand for these. But now let me touch upon another aspect of your personality, which really, got me excited. When did you see, you've done well. Yes, there are a lot of alumni who do well. I would call it as, really among the top 10 percentile or so, or really some absolutely fabulous stuff that you've achieved. But it's your give back to IIT Delhi, your association with IIT Delhi. When did that start and what is happening on that front?
Yeah, so this desire of giving back has always been very strong. And I should say a couple of things here. Number one, when I started the company, right in the beginning, when we were giving some contracts to vendors, they came and asked me where I wanted to, and this is a real story because it really happened to me. They came and asked me where I wanted to get the money, whether I wanted it overseas or whether I wanted the money in cash in India. So I was shocked. I didn't even know what people were talking about, right? And then I got thinking about this, what I really wanted to do. And I realized that my value systems would not let me do anything but the straight and narrow path and the right way of doing things. And for me, the end did not justify the means. The means were as important. So I set out to create a company that was also as high integrity and as high on ethics as possible. And so for me, one of the biggest achievements really is that in our sector, in India, we've been able to create a fairly good sized company while adhering to the higher standards of corporate governance and integrity and ethics, which I think is a very important thing to prove as well, because it's not just the old established groups or the people who know how to operate in the Indian system in a certain way who can be successful. I think we are hopefully being able to demonstrate that you can operate in a nice ethical manner and still be successful. And my experience has been that, when you go and talk to people in the government as well, they want to do business with you because one part of them wants to have more companies like us out there, while of course a lot of other things also happen. So I think that's very important. The second thing I would say is that right from the beginning, we've always had a view that we wanted to give back, that we were part of India, that we wanted to be part of the community and the ethos of the country. And therefore, we've always had a very strong focus on CSR activities. And for example, we operate in 110 sites in India, all in very, very backward areas. And there a very little amount of money goes a long way. And so, we've helped create rooftops on school, rooftop solar plants on schools. We've, launched women's self-help programs. We've opened, we are training people in sports. We're doing self-help groups. We're doing all sorts of interesting things. And that is something that I get the most amount of satisfaction from, frankly speaking, because I really get the sense that we are able to contribute and give back. So as far as it comes to IIT Delhi, that is also something because it's right next to us. We're in Gurgaon. IIT Delhi is very close by. And all of us have some reasonably high degree of affinity towards the institute, which, helps shape us and make us who we are right now. And so I went and I, met the director, and we've actually set up a renewable energy center of excellence at IIT Delhi. And I found that they have such great faculty, but the faculty don't really know what our problems are or what the industry problems are. So they are living in their own world. They're doing research on things which have very little relevance to the real world. And so we've actually gone there and spent a lot of time with the professors on helping them understand the issues and actually define specific research areas, which we are now doing in that Renewable Energy Center of Excellence. And we are really looking at seeing how we can actually broaden out that whole, that whole relationship with IIT Delhi and really start bridging the gap a lot more between industry and academia. So I think that is one important thing that we're looking at doing. And secondly, I'm also on the board of IIT Delhi right now. I have been for the last 2.5 years. So that's, I think, also a good thing because it just keeps you a little bit more connected.
I couldn't agree more with you because the aspect in terms of, because the KPIs of the industry and academia are totally different, because the academia is more focused on, publishing papers and giving cited, which possibly nobody may even read outside the academic community. And the industry is very much into, kind of real world problems and to get the dialogue going. And it is not just, getting a dialogue going, but how to make it happen. So that is what I just love it. Now, you see, clearly, I would call you as a standout person, not because of, just that you've done well, but it is about the sense of values in having the governance system in place that you want to have this kind of an enterprise or a business, and also in terms of the give back that you want to do, both in terms of nation building as well as, holistically around the environment. What advice would you have for startups? And, the person who introduced you to me, Smarth, and thank you so much, Smarth, for introducing me to Sumant, because I would not have known even Sumant, without you. Now, this gentleman is starting off his journey. He is a 2019 graduate, and we'll be having him on the call today. So, what advice would you have for people like him?
And I must say, Sumant actually is Smarth. The reason he and I got to know each other is because we have instituted an award in IIT Delhi for sustainability, and I think he's one of the recipients of that award. Look, my advice, it's hard to say because every journey is different, and so I would hesitate to presume to be able to advise other people who are at a very different point of their lives and experience levels than I'm at or I was at. The only thing I would say in general is be ambitious, have drive, and work hard. And I think if you can do all of that, and if you operate in the right ethical way, then I think over a longer term you'll go far. You may have some short-term setbacks, which is fine. Everybody has them. Doesn't matter. I think you just have to stay the course. But shoot for the stars, because there's no harm done in shooting for the stars.
Love it.
So
now,
don't compromise.
Absolutely fabulous. Last question. What value proposition would you expect or want from GCC or the platform that one is trying to create? Why would you want to kind of connect back, or is it from an emotional, professional, give back, whatever it is? I just want to hear your thoughts.
So first of all, Pradeep, I must laud you for all the effort that you're putting in, and you told me about your story and how you got connected back to IIT Delhi recently or a couple of years ago, and how you've really taken on this whole effort with such a high degree of commitment and passion. So it's really good to see that. And as I said, I'm grateful to you and I laud you for the effort that you're putting in. Look, my thing is that I'm potentially, unlike a lot of you who might be outside India, I'm very much in India. I'm already very connected to IIT Delhi, and in that sense, for me, the value proposition really would be, there's a tremendous amount of expertise in this group. There's a tremendous amount of experience. Everybody has gone through different paths, and there's a tremendous amount of networking effect as well. So I think that if there is any way in which you can actually provide or allow people to connect with each other directly. So let's say we have this call. If there are 2 or 3 or 4 people who are interested in what somebody else has said, then allowing them to connect directly with each other and to explore different possibilities, I think something like that might be quite useful. So it certainly would be useful from my standpoint. But I think to the extent that the rest of you who are not so connected to IIT Delhi are able to actually connect with the institute, I think that would be very useful, because the institute does need a lot of help. They need obviously financial help, but they also need equally some directional help on how, what they could be doing, should be doing, etc. There are so many students that come out that can do with mentorship, that can do with guidance. So I think any connectivity into the institute also by the alums would be very useful. So to the extent, Pradeep, that you can provide that, I think that would be very good.
Very true, absolutely. And that is why we are going into, the value creation layer at the third point. Once you build up the numbers, because at the moment we are still in that phase 1, where because I just myself restarted this activity just a couple of months back, but it's been absolutely delightful. I have thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I'm sure all of us have thoroughly enjoyed, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you, because you are an inspiration. As a person, you are an inspiration, which is, I think, very critical to know what the value system that you stand for. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give us a big round of applause to Sumant.
Thank you so much, Pradeep. Thank you so much for inviting me to this session, and thank you all for being such patient listeners. Thank you.
Nice to hear and see you, Sumant.
Thank you. Who is that?
Naval Jaggi.
Yeah, hi.
नाम तो सुना ही होगा.
Okay.
So absolutely fabulous, and we will keep in touch with Sumant, and and he's some very inspirational thoughts. Let's now move on to the second part of the agenda, and we go from Sumant to the second earliest batch of IIT Delhi, and where there are big stalwarts and big shoes to fill in. In fact, I am, rather than my feet, I myself could go into those shoes, But jokes apart, let me hand it over to Dinesh. Dinesh is absolutely a fabulous guy, and he's been the one who's got the group of 1967 so galvanized that we had 8, 9 people, who were wanting to join in this session, and we had to split it into 2 groups. So please give a big round of applause to Dinesh, and over to you, Dinesh, to introduce the 1967. And from there, we will go to Smarth, which is 2019. And we will also compare that what is the value proposition that the 67 batch people who are in their mid-70s were. 67 means I'm 1977 graduate, which means that they are exactly 10 years senior to me. But over to you, Dinesh, and please give a big round of applause to Dinesh.
Thank you, Pradeep.
Yes.
Thank you very much. As you are aware, on 18 September, because of Pradeep's efforts, the 1967 made their first presentation. And there were 4 of us in that presentation, starting with me, followed by Anand Agarwal from Ottawa, who is one of the greatest builders and developers there. And the latest news from him is that he's now building an 18-story building near the airport. And he wants us all to suggest an Indian name for that building.
So let me, Dinesh, at this point, I want to ask him that, does he and Trump go head to head in real estate?
Pretty close, I suppose. Then after Anand Agrawal, we had Om Sharma, who spent all his life in developing Pratt & Whitney technology. And last but not the least, Ravinder Bhatia, who joined Navy in the IT itself and rose to the highest rank of Admiral in the Indian Navy.
And may I add that Ravinder Bhatia took a second-class ticket, and he went for the interview because it was a free ticket.
Yeah.
And may I also add that our man Dinesh, he has been Director General for Military Engineering Services, but he has also been at the forefront building infrastructure during various wars. So very, very commendable. Back to you.
Thank you. So in the second part, I have got 3 batchmates of mine today who are going to speak to you, very distinguished persons. Incidentally, after being batchmates in 1967, we are again kind of classmates today in 2021. We are all studying together Bhagavad Gita from a teacher. so we are again indirectly classmates again, actually. So let me introduce the first of us who is going to speak today is Rishi Madan. He's a mechanical engineer. He's going to speak from Gurugram, India. Rishi Madan, unlike others who migrated to USA and Canada for higher studies, stayed back in India and joined a heavy engineering company called ISGEC, Indian Sugar General Engineering Company. Worked very hard, generated millions of dollars of revenue for that company, and rose to become its president, which is a great achievement. And after retirement, now he's a part-time consultant for marketing for an international wine company in India. The second batchmate today is going to speak is Mr. Divakar Bhargava, mechanical engineer, who will speak to us from Richmond, Virginia, USA. He's a scholar. I consider him as a scholar. He recites Sanskrit verses very well in our class, has tremendous knowledge about Indian heritage. He has spent all his life, almost 44 years, in serving the nuclear power industry, power plant industry in the world and USA. He has been instrumental, it's a feather in his cap, that he wrote the nuclear industry-wide safety guidelines in the aftermath of Fukushima nuclear power tsunami disaster in 2011. A great achievement indeed. And not leaving behind sports, he is also a winner of a couple of awards from American Contract Bridge League. So that's Mr. Divakar Bhargava. And last but not the least, we have Sarvjit Thakur, an electrical engineer, who will speak to us from San Francisco, USA. He did his MSc in Computer Science from Rice University, MBA from Santa Clara University, has worked for several Silicon Valley companies like HP, Intel, Hitachi, has been an entrepreneur in telecom and IT services, is a charter member of TIE Silicon Valley, has been a mentoring angel investments in VC funds. Incidentally, I find him to be a very incisive and sharp intellect person and tremendous knowledge of scriptures. So back to you, Pradeep, for the fireside chat.
Thank you very much, Dinesh. And I don't know that much about Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, I would have to lean back on our colleague Vijay, maybe for shlokas, but for another time. So, and we went from Gurugram, which is the new name for Gurgaon, to Brampton, which is near Toronto in Canada. And again, we are getting back to Gurugram, to Rishi. Rishi, where are you?
Pradeep, and thank Dinesh.
So Rishi, tell us about your journey. I'm also, I want to narrate an incident, post my IIT Delhi, I joined Crompton Greaves, and before I migrated to Australia a couple of years later. And when I, joined the company, I thought that I am one of the directors of the company. I was the bottommost level. So I walked into the company thinking I'm the director of the company, and all these guys are idiots. All I have to do is to tell them, that do this, do that, and that will be the end of the story. So did you also feel like that when you joined ISGEC?
No, definitely not. Because when you work for an engineering company, you have to work a different way. And that too, specifically when you start with a design. Yeah, I thank you very much. And I also thank GCC for giving me time to make myself present myself. But I am really not very sure, as you said it, Dinesh said it, that whether your viewer would find my story as a very interesting or inspiring, because unlike my other batchmates or other speakers, I did not opt for the higher education, like going to master's or like going to MBA, or even change a job throughout my career of 47 years. So, which is very unimaginary and unbelievable in today's world.
Well, Rishi, I can give you one example which we had last time. Was my batchmate called Pradeep Kapoor. He joined ISS and he remained with ISS. So jokes apart, jokes apart. No, I know.
अभी तो मेरे बच्चे भी कहते हैं पापा आप बेवकूफ थे. Jokes apart. So this made a fact of the life, because that time, 67, when I came out of the college, it was not a good year for the jobs. There was a lot of recession in the Indian industry. But I was among a few lucky guys who got a job within a couple of days after I left the college. My employer, ISGEC, as Dinesh put it, ISGEC Engineering, Heavy Engineering, was very relatively unknown company at that time. And it was located in a very sleepy and a small town of Haryana, Yamunanagar. You have been there, you have seen that town. So, but one of the advantages of joining ISGEC at that time when I joined was that we three batchmates from the same batch, 67 mechanical, we joined together.
Wow.
So we had a good time for a couple of years. And secondly, coming from the IITs, we got about 15% higher salary than the engineers from other reputable colleges like Thapars or PEC Chandigarh at that time. We got a higher salary of 15%. And well, it was good, but it also put us a lot of to show our performance. So
out of curiosity, I know that when I left IIT and I joined Crompton, my salary was 1,100 rupees, as a management trainee. How much were you earning in 1967 when you joined?
In 67, I joined ISGEC, we were getting only 500 rupees.
Oh man, and that was 50% more than what other engineers were getting. 15% more than other engineers were getting. Oh, yes. Wow.
But that was the market salary at that time.
Yes.
And we were finding that money good enough to do almost and enjoy our life during that time.
Yes.
That was the period. Well, ISGEC at that time was in a business of manufacture of the engineering equipments for the capital good industries like power plants, process equipment plant, and the machine tools. When I joined in 67, after a couple of months, ISGEC decided to go for a new product line by the hydraulic metal forming machines. And I was assigned this new assignment. And in early 1968, I was sent to UK for 6 months to have a training with our UK collaborator, with whom we have a technical collaboration, not a joint venture, but a technical collaboration. But I found that within this 6 month period of time, my collaborator realized that India is not a country of snakes. They also have engineers and the technology people who can understand the technology. But this collaboration lasted only 5 years. And this 5 years was not a sufficient time to absorb the technology at that time. And any approval for the extension needed the Government of India approval. And Government of India offered a very stiff term to extend this technology. Well, that was not acceptable to the collaborator, and they say, let's part away. And the management was in a fix, was hesitant that whether to continue with the new product or not, because the time was not sufficient enough to absorb the technology. But fortunately, they relied on my confidence, and we went ahead. And during this period, we upgraded our technology, we modernized our technology, we extended our technology, and I'm proud to say that ISGEC today is one of the best 3 in the world for the manufacture of the metal forming machine for which I was selected in GCC.
One of the questions, Rishi, which comes to my mind is because I have a memory of ISGEC of way back in 1978 or so, when I used to visit Yamuna Nagar, and it used to be a sleepy town, and you took an overnight train and you got there. Transformation of that organization from what must have been a family-owned business into a billion-dollar business spread over different locations. How did that happen?
2 things, Pradeep, frankly. Number 1 is that time it was a very small company, but that time they preferred to have the engineers, that too from the reputed engineer college. Most of the engineers were coming either from Chandigarh or Thakur, and then we were the first batch from IIT Delhi to join them. And it encouraged us, they gave a lot of encouragement. And secondly, the management never interfered in the development of in the growth of the company. They gave a very free hand to the professionals. They relied upon them on the technology matter, on their financial skill, on the technical skill. They relied on them. That's why now the ISGEC, as you know, on today, is practically a 1 billion company and a multi-locational manufacturing facilities, including USA and Canada. They have a multi-locational offices. So this is type of the confidence they put it on their professionals. I would like to put it that way.
How many people would have been working for ISGEC at the time you joined, and how many people would be working for ISGEC now? Roughly.
Yeah, roughly. When I joined the company, the number of people were working around 500 or 600 people. But today, it is more than 5,000 in a different places. We have number of manufacturing facilities. We have Yamunanagar, we have Gurgaon, Babel, which is near Gurgaon. We have Gujarat, one of the heaviest manufacturing plant. As I told you, we have in Canada, we have in the USA. So, and the big offices, it's one of the, I won't say equal to L&T, but it is a good competition to L&T for their price. I'm saying if anybody close, any other industry close to L&T in the engineering equipment, the number 2 is ISGEC at the moment.
Now, another question which comes to my mind is that when you look at your batch, everybody's so spread out, like all other batches, like Dinesh is sitting in Brampton, a couple of guys are in the US, couple of guys, Ravi has been in the Navy and all over. So apart from WhatsApp, what kept you in touch with each other? Oh, WhatsApp wasn't even there in earlier days.
You see, as I told you, that the management gave us a very free hand and always encouraged us. In 1968, for the domestic travel, we started traveling by air. So we became a part of the management.
Right. But I'm referring more to your batchmates. I'm referring more to how did you keep in touch with people like Dinesh, Ravi, Divakar, and so on and so forth?
Yeah,
over the years.
Sorry, I didn't follow your question then.
My question is that, you see, in 1967, when you finished, there was no WhatsApp. And all of you different batchmates went into so many different directions. Some went to US, some went into, government service, some went here and there. So how did you maintain networks with all of you, with each other over the years?
You see, I think one of the biggest reasons was that we were the second batch. I'm saying not many students in IIT Delhi. And we were very close to all of them. And we keep a track of most of us, that where he had gone, because right from the beginning, I knew where the OP Sharma is and where he had joined, where the other batchmates are that way. So that close relation for staying in 5 years in the hostel help us to have a better understanding, better friendship, better keeping a closeness to each other. I think that may be the right answer. And of course, no, the technology has changed. Everybody is so close. And
so the other question is that if you had an opportunity to relive your life once again, would you have gone to IIT Delhi once again, and would you have joined ISGEC once again?
You see, we, as far as batch is concerned, we have a Golden Jubilee celebration about 4 years back. And we expect to have another celebration next year, hopefully, if the COVID don't interfere with us. Definitely, as on date, I would like to go to IIT Delhi. I would like to go to IIT Delhi because I found it one of the best institute where I could get my education, my background, and that too, especially coming a very, very small town of Abode, which is a border town of Pakistan, and settling in Delhi, the IIT atmosphere helped us. No, going back to ISGEC, again, my answer will be yes.
So I suppose another question is that what value proposition do you look for from a GCC, or what would really attract you to be actively involved in GCC?
Yeah, Pradeep, I thought over it. Frankly, during a couple of years of my job, last 5-6 years of my job, I interfaced with IIT quite a lot through the Ministry of Heavy Industry and through the association. I wanted them to get involved in technology upgradation to solve the industry problem, day-to-day, their real-world problem, as Mr. Sinha put it. But what I found, sorry, these are my personal comments, don't take it otherwise, but I found it IIT Delhi was too bureaucratic in their approach for taking the issue from the outside industry. They are very good for taking the problem for the which are national importance, which bring them the headlines. But unfortunately, they are very reluctant to take the issues from the industry. From my own industry, I tried 3 projects, had a discussion at the highest level, but the terms they were offering, the delivery they were offering, were not acceptable. Nobody in industry cannot wait for 18 months or 20 months for a real-time problem. And you know, we had to go to Aachen, Germany, to get the technical resolve of the issue, which they did in a couple of weeks, not a couple of months, couple of weeks for us. So this is a difference. What I feel is that IIT Delhi have got a good number of alumni who have done very well in their way of life. They must introduce a system of bringing their expertise in their academia. They should call them as a guest lecturer, guest professor, something like that way. For example, Dr. O.P. Sharma, he has got a lot of done work on wind technology. Divakar, he has done a lot of work on the nuclear. Why not to call these people who have got so much expertise with them and have an exchange of views? But this had to be made to acceptable to the institutes.
So the question is that there is at this point it becomes important to clarify that GCC is an alumni association initiative.
Yeah.
And IIT Delhi is a separate body. So what we can do is pass on the feedback, but knowing the kind of a structure, we will take this up in a separate discussion. But coming back to what would you expect from GCC, from the alumni association perspective, what value do you want GCC to provide?
One of the associations I gave, of course, feedback to IIT. And second, this feedback.
If you are going, let me know. I can drive.
Hello.
Yeah. Let me mute. And Rishi, can you? I'll once again mute everybody, and if you can unmute yourself.
Okay.
Rishi, unmute yourself and then talk. Yeah.
One of the suggestions which you gave is right one, that give them a feedback. But I suggest that instead of giving a feedback in person, make a group of the professionals who have done well or who have done an expertise in their field, have a discussion with the senior people at a director level to how to get the benefit of their experience to back to the IITs. You know, in Germany, for example, where I visited number of technical institutes, you cannot become a professor unless you have a 2-year experience in the industry. Of course, through the ministry, we try to bring this change, but of course, it was not acceptable to any of the academia. But I think this is a good opportunity, and then we must understand it, that IIT Delhi or any other IIT has got a value, not because of its name, but also because of the work done, hard work done by their alumni. Alumni have done well, and it has brought up the brand value of the IITs. And therefore, IIT must realize that they can contribute quite a lot in bringing them number 1, number 2, or number 3, at least in the first 10 of the world universities.
Absolutely right. Some very, very good feedback. And
number
with that,
number 3, I would like you to at least to give a feedback to IIT Delhi. I still feel, in spite of our efforts, I still feel that in general or in IITs, the stipend given for the research work is still too very low. Though we got it increased by 30-40%, but believe me, if I'm doing a research work, I'm doing MBA and getting 40,000 and 50,000 rupees per month, and at the same time I can get a job outside at 1.5 lakhs or 2 lakhs of rupees. Sorry, I'm talking lakhs and rupees. I will leave the research work in between. So IIT should help somehow or the other, create a fund. If the government is not helping, let us create a fund through the alumni, create a fund and give it to the research scholars who are really doing work for the industries. This is another value addition which I can think of.
thank you very much. Some lovely thoughts. And, we will carry forward the discussion, because the entire purpose of creating this platform is not to have just a one-off chat kind of a thing, but to make it an ongoing engagement. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to Rishi. And it was absolutely lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.
With that, I move across to, where should I move across to? I move back to US with Divakar. Divakar, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Or are you creating some nuclear shocks somewhere?
I'm going to talk about it.
So, Divakar, you have made a name for yourself, especially in the nuclear safety aspects, but you've been in the nuclear industry. Tell us about your journey.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Pradeep and Dinesh, for inviting me. It was so nice to hear from my other batchmates, including Rishi today, a couple of weeks ago. But first, I must congratulate Pradeep. You're doing an amazing job with GCC. So my journey began at IIT. I was in Shivalik Hostel all 5 years, and the memories are still fresh. The best part was making excellent friends, and we are in contact with them. And you asked Rishi, I have been trying to get hooked with my friends from IIT over the years. For instance, Ravi, I had lost complete contact, and it so happened that my uncle knew a naval person, and through him, I was able to contact Ravi. And then we had the Golden Jubilee celebration where a lot of us met. So now a lot of us are in touch again. So at IIT, I spent too much time in activities such as playing bridge, badminton, table tennis, and I organized the first inter-college Hindi debate and personally invited people from colleges across Delhi, and also the chief guest, Amrita Preetham, who came. But then in 67, when I graduated, I came to Syracuse University and for graduate work. And in May of 68, I started working at a small, well, not small, but Smith Corona typewriter company, designing typewriter components. And they asked me to transfer to California. So in October 69, I transferred, but before that, I worked hard to finish my master's thesis. And I got the master's degree. And then when I moved to California, I started playing a lot of bridge. Practically every day and every weekend, I would be playing in tournaments. And one of my bridge highlights was that in 71, we won an intercity match representing the San Francisco Bay Area against a star-studded Los Angeles team. And then in 72, I moved back to Syracuse to do my PhD, but I was playing too much bridge and my thesis remained incomplete. But then in 73, I joined a consulting company, Stone & Webster. We were designing and constructing light water nuclear plants in the US. From there in 1990, I moved to Dominion Energy, which a utility company in Richmond, based in Richmond, which operates 6 nuclear units in Virginia and Connecticut, until I retired at the end of 2017. So I primarily worked on structural dynamics and seismic safety areas. And for many years, I chaired a seismic safety group of the US-based Electric Power Research Institute with a worldwide membership of over 40 nuclear facilities. I traveled a lot and disseminated US research to other members, including European members, French, UK, and other Spanish and other US European members. And now the interesting part of my career. I had planned to retire in March of 2011, but one day before my retirement, it so happened that a magnitude 9.1 Great Tohoku earthquake struck Northeast Japan. And the ensuing tsunami destroyed the 3 nuclear reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant and killed over 15,000 people. The plant destruction was actually worse than what happened at the Chernobyl accident. And I was asked to indefinitely postpone my retirement. Then what happened almost a few months later in August of 2011, a magnitude 5.8 earthquake struck with its epicenter just 50 miles from my house and 11 miles from this Northana nuclear plant, which is owned by my company, which automatically shut down the plant. And this earthquake exceeded the levels to which the plant was designed for. I was actually home at the time the earthquake occurred. And for about a minute, my entire house was shaking vigorously. There was damage so far as almost 120 miles across in the Washington, DC area. So addressing these 2 events, the next 6 years of my career proved to be the most challenging and interesting years of my professional careers. So what we did for the Fukushima, together with a handful of my industry colleagues, we developed a Fukushima industry guidance, which was used by all the 100 US nuclear plants and to some extent worldwide. In fact, all 440 operating units in the world had to address the lessons from the Fukushima disaster. And for the Virginia earthquake, we did 100% inspection, testing, and analytical evaluation of all systems and components in the plant. And I interfaced with the regulators and other stakeholders, and we were able to restart the plant within 3 months, which was exceptional considering the largest nuclear complex, which is in Japan, the Kashiwazaki Kariwa, where a big earthquake occurred in 2007. They are still not operating. They haven't been able to restart after 14 years. They expect next year. So the consequences of the Fukushima accident are far-reaching. Nuclear plants around the world have spent millions of dollars. the cleanup cost in Japan for this due to this accident is expected to exceed $200 billion.
Oh my God.
Right, that's incredible. Similarly, millions of dollars were spent by the US nuclear industry to address the lessons learned from the Virginia earthquake. And many of us felt, including the president of my company and others, that if we weren't successful in restarting the plant within a short time, the future of the US nuclear industry would have been bleak. At least there probably wouldn't have been any new plants because of the fear and the economic cost.
So let me ask you a question at this stage, that when you are writing down specifications, or you are writing down or designing, nuclear safety, do you do this while playing bridge?
No, I play bridge in the evening. Actually, nowadays I'm playing more on the internet because of COVID. But that's a good question. I never gave up the passion. So I play bridge in the evening. But during the times when we were working on the nuclear plant, I had no time for bridge because we were working literally 18 hours a day. And that's one of the things that I'm coming. And so one of the key tools that we used to address these earthquakes was doing probabilistic risk analysis. So in other words, what the plant is designed to and the actual event that occurs could be much higher than what your plant is designed. So how do you prepare yourself for that? So the way we do it, there was a professor at MIT many years ago, Rasmussen, who developed this tool called probabilistic risk analysis. And that points out what are the weak components in your plants and systems. And so what components may be retrofitted or replaced to make sure that a seismic event doesn't jeopardize the safety of the plant. So right now, I'm spending my time in reading, writing, traveling, playing bridge, playing the harmonium, walking, and occasionally I perform Hindu marriages of close friends and relatives. But one thing I want to point out, that after having lived 54 years in the US, I still remain a proud Indian citizen.
So in terms of the value proposition, what value proposition do you think is going to be most appealing from GCC? Is it the opportunities to conduct more marriages?
Absolutely, that's a fun part. Let me just point one thing before I give you to the value proposition. One thing I've learned from my journey, that there is no substitute for hard work. So there were instances in my life when intense effort was needed, and each time the desired outcome was achieved. So it reminds me of a verse from Tulsidas. Jehika Jehipar Satya Sanehu So Tehi Mile Na Kachu Sandehu. That means whatever you are really passionate about, there is no doubt that you will achieve it. So that's nothing comes without hard work. But in terms of value proposition, Pradeep, you have already listed many of the value propositions, and they're all excellent. For me, I enjoy listening to the brilliant IIT alumni and learning from their journey, which is a really interesting thing. I've started joining these sessions. But one thing that I want to generate interest with this GCC is an initiative we are pursuing at IIT Delhi using an initial donation we made. I believe IIT Delhi must emphasize more so than it currently does on humanities education alongside the core engineering curricula. This would broaden students' perspective and increase their self-awareness. And so the future leaders that IIT generates in business, politics, and academics can ultimately solve India's and world problems more appropriately. So we are planning this by hosting a series of lectures at IIT by scholars in literature, philosophy, history, arts, music, poetry, linguistics, etc., including Sanskrit, for instance. I just wonder that the disasters that occurred due to Chernobyl and Fukushima, one was caused by error by the engineers in doing a test at Chernobyl, and the Fukushima can be blamed on a flawed design of building the plant near the seashore without worrying about tsunami waves. They could have been avoided, perhaps, saving hundreds of billions of dollars if those engineers had humanities-based training and intuition and out of the box perspective in their thinking. So that is what I really believe in. In fact, we had our first face-to-face discussion with IIT professors just yesterday on this initiative. And I hope through GCC, we can entice more such efforts to help in this endeavor. So
that is exactly what, you hit the nail on the head. The idea is that every part of us, each and every person, if he or she drives whatever they are passionate about and builds a community within GCC, that is what I see as the biggest achievements, And, the importance of arts, liberal arts, it cannot be but overemphasized. In fact, the STEM has now become STEAM, and from STEAM it has gone on to become STREAM. And there I will get you introduced with another group of GCC which is focused on to inclusion, but where they're also got a strong focus on STEAM, But
yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
So this has been absolutely wonderful, and it's so nice to hear that you are attending these meetings, and I'm going to have a discussion with you, ongoing basis, and get you more involved.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Please give a big round of applause to Divakar.
Thank you very much.
Now we move across to the third gentleman, and we go from US to US, but we now go to the Silicon Valley, and we go to Sarvjit. Sarvjit, are you there? And
yes, I'm very much there. I've been up since 5:30 a.m. local time.
I love it,
Which is very unusual, but I'm very excited to be part of this.
So my first question is that all these books which are lying behind you, is that just a screen share, or have you actually read these books?
I used to be an avid reader, in early years of my life, and then I got very busy with career and family and so forth, and some of those books were not touched for a long time. But COVID gave me a second chance at going back to reading, and I would say I've read about 40-50 books in the last 1.5 years on different subjects. So yes, there was a gap of about 20-25 years when all I could do was watch television and maybe go quickly glance through some magazines like The Economist or some of the Science or National Geographic and those kinds of things. But back to books again, thanks to COVID.
Oh, love it. And now, you see, I understand that you spent a lot of time in the technology industry, both working as well as have you been an investor, you've been an entrepreneur. So who is the real Sarvjit? Will the real Sarvjit please stand up and tell us the story?
Oh, I don't know. Let me give you a quick tour through my career. After IIT, I went to Rice University in Houston, Texas, where I got a degree in computer science, master's degree. I worked in New Jersey. My first job was with the RCA, David Sarnoff Research Center, which doesn't exist anymore. And I moved to Silicon Valley with Hewlett Packard in 1972. Initially working in semiconductors and computer-aided design automation software areas. To give you an idea of where the semiconductor industry has come, when I first got involved in it in 1972, I used to work with a process called silicon on sapphire, CMOS silicon on sapphire. And the feature width by which technology is measured generation to generation was about 6 microns, 6 micrometers wide geometry. And today, the leaders like TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, and Samsung, which are the 2 leaders, are talking about 7 nanometers. I was talking about 6 micrometers, and the geometries are now at 10, 7 nanometers, going to 3 nanometers, and now they're talking angstrom level, technology. So you can see how many more transistors can be packed on your, little devices today than.
But at this stage, let me ask you a quick question. Do you think the Moore's law has still a way to go?
I think it has still a bit to go. And then, of course, the new things like quantum, computing and so forth that we have been talking about will probably set in. But yes, Moore's law still has a bit to go, I think.
And from HP, what did you do further?
Oh, HP, I worked for a couple of other semiconductor companies. Initially in engineering, and then I got my MBA from Santa Clara while I was working with HP, and that allowed me to go into marketing, sales, business, and general management. So I worked for a couple of other companies like Intel, and Hitachi was my last employer. I took an early retirement from Hitachi in 1990, and the reason I did that was while I was working with them, I got involved along with a couple of other friends very early in cellular communications. This was a brand new technology, and the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission, which is in charge of the radio spectrum in the United States, was allocating frequencies for cellular applications. They had divided the country into what they call MSAs and RSAs, metropolitan statistical areas, basically cities, and RSAs, rural statistical areas, so which would be the suburbs and the countryside and so forth, to try to provide a seamless cellular coverage. It was very early, so I got involved in that, and I was fortunate enough to get many minority interests in several markets and one majority interest, which was in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So we developed, the cellular market there. Basically, you had to do all the, the design for antennas and towers and so forth, and the business plan, how you provide service. And before we had to take it too far, we got an offer from Southwestern Bell, one of the, the Bell telephone companies. And they acquired our interest.
So you had an exit also. Before, Bell was also breaking down into different companies.
Right. So that allowed me to take a retirement from Hitachi. I was 45-year-old then. And then I continued, developing some of the other markets. We still have some left 50 years later or 40 years later. So that's how I became sort of an entrepreneur. And while I was in that, the Y2K was about to happen, and I saw an opportunity in software development and IT services. I had connections with India, and we started doing some offshore software development and consulting. So that was a separate outfit. So I was focusing on the communication area as well as IT services with Y2K in mind. And that was quite successful. Also, we started bringing some people over from India on H-1B visas, and some of their spouses or fiancés did not have visas. So, that was a very laborious process. We say, here's another opportunity. So we started another thing, providing legal services for immigration.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. So we developed some software using our software facilities in Hyderabad to provide a platform whereby a lot of the US visa applications could be done online with minimum human interaction or interference or we did hire some legal staff, even though my background was engineering, and worked on that for 2 or 3 years. And then this was acquired by a company called Legalzoom. Have you heard of Legalzoom? Anybody?
No.
Okay. They're online law services for anything. If you want to incorporate by yourself, it may cost you $4,000 to $5,000 to go through the process, but you can do it for a couple $100 online. If you want to write a prenup agreement before you're getting married, you can do that for a couple $100, that kind of a thing. So they took over, they acquired our platform for immigration. So we made an exit there also. And this company, by the way, was started by a gentleman, a lawyer called Robert Shapiro of the O.J. Simpson fame. He was one of the the attorneys on O.J. Simpson's defense team.
Yes.
So after that trial, he started this company, Legalzoom, and they are the ones who took over our technology. So the immigration and naturalization services provided on Legalzoom are based, they were based originally on our platform, and then obviously they expanded and so forth. And, we got out of that because, legal services was not really my core interest. We just got involved in that through the H-1B hiring process. And it was a kind of a sideline, which became a little bit of an opportunity. And then we got out of that and back to IT services and telecommunications. So I was, having been an entrepreneur myself and been reasonably successful and having made some investments and so forth, I got more and more involved in encouraging and fostering entrepreneurship. I'm a charter member of an organization called TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs, which was started in mid-90s in Silicon Valley. Because at that time, the infrastructure wasn't there, the ecosystem wasn't there for young entrepreneurs who had good product ideas or other ideas, to take their ideas into real business and companies and going through the different phases. They couldn't get any funding, for instance. It was a very old boys kind of a club here, the VCs and so forth. If you are of Indian origin or Chinese origin, forget it. It was very difficult. So that's why they started, some of my friends started it. I was not one of the early founders, but some of my very good friends, the names may be familiar. Suhas Patel was one of them, Kanwal Rekhi, these are all from IITs. Suhas was from IIT Kharagpur, Kanwal was from IIT Bombay. There was another gentleman who worked with me at Intel who got involved. His name is Raj Jaswa, also from IIT Bombay. So these guys started this TIE organization in Silicon Valley, basically to help young entrepreneurs get mentorship and then funding. And be able to grow their ideas into early stage and hopefully to late stage and make exits. Many of them would not, and that's part of the risk-taking journey. So TIE has been very successful. Now it has 52 chapters all across the world.
Yep.
Okay, Silicon Valley is still the
biggest
original one.
Yeah.
And I'm a charter member. I'm very actively involved in the angel investing arm of TIE, as well as in some VC funds.
So this gets me to a couple of points. Number one is that I'm also, former leader with, in fact, leader with IBM Australia and New Zealand, and I built up the global delivery business into a multi-billion-dollar business, leveraging India, China, Philippines, Vietnam, Egypt, Romania, Argentina, Brazil. So therefore, I fully understand, what you built up in the services globalization. But what is more fascinating is that your entrepreneurial mindset and your entrepreneurial thinking, because you went into that business looking at the environment of Y2K, From there, you found that there was a need for a service for legal and immigration services, and you went over there. But not only that, but you also successfully exited two businesses. So that's a great story. What I want to ask you is that you see you've got a very interesting profile because first of all, which part of Bay Area do you live in?
I live in a small town called Saratoga, which is close to San Jose.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I am typically in the Bay Area once in 4 months. I used to be there before the pandemic. I've been locked down in Sydney.
We are in the heart of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I know the Bay Area very well. So the point which comes to my mind is because you see, you are still active as an angel investor, as a mentor. So what value proposition would you like to have from GCC, or you would attract you to GCC?
Well, you mentioned special interest groups. Entrepreneurship could be one of those special interest groups, and I can definitely help since I'm involved not only Thai and Silicon Valley, but also very well connected with India. In fact, in 2016, Prime Minister Modi started an initiative called Startup India and Stand Up India. So I was one of the members there was a delegation of about a dozen of us from Thai actually, who were part of the Startup India operation. I was one of the delegates there. And I'm very familiar with that program. We were invited to the Rashtrapati Bhavan by the then president, Pranab Mukherjee, and gave a little 5-minute presentation there and so forth. And then been involved since in not directly in investing in India, but definitely in helping and mentoring. It's still very difficult, quite frankly, because of the obstacles.
I couldn't agree more with you. When I look at the Bay Area and look at because everywhere the discussion is always that how do we replicate the Bay Area in different parts of the world, But it is a very different ecosystem at all. When you go to Stanford, it's a way of life that most of the professors have startups, it's a very different ecosystem altogether. But, this has been absolutely lovely, Sarvjit, and I'm going to pick you up on that. And, because startup, you see, is a very, very important segment of our community, which is the IIT alumni. And, there is going to be a strong focus or a special interest group on startups. And I would definitely like to get you at an advisory board member level for that particular, because I think people can, benefit from your experience, and you also get an opportunity to, give back. And in fact, one of our group members, like I said, who's going to be just speaking after you, he's a 2019. He's moved. He was working with BCG and he's left BCG and gone to Singapore. Now has his own startup, and he's just in that particular phase. And I will also connect him with you so that they get the benefit of what your experience is. So
absolutely, and I'll be very happy again to put anybody in touch with the Thai. Like I said, the founders like Subhas Patil and Kanwal Rekhi, they're personal friends. We socialize with each other, and we see each other not only the Thai functions, but also at each other's houses and so forth. So we are very close, and I'll be very happy to help anybody through the Thai organization as well as otherwise, because some of my current interests are outside of engineering and technology and into social impact. Absolutely. And Divakar mentioned the importance of humanities and social sciences. Absolutely. In the IIT curricula. I think that's very, very important. And most of us should look at, broadening our horizons. I would definitely be in touch with Shri Vijay Anand, whom I just met today, because in fact, Divakar is another one who might be interested, because we pursue interests other than technology, entrepreneurship and business, very interested in, the Hindu dharma and the Indology and, some of the things that, have hampered us, the colonization, and of course before that, 700 years of, subjugation to foreigners. But a resurgence is happening there.
So on this front, in fact, Vijay is leading one of those special interest groups, which is on health and well-being, and he combines the spiritual element in that. So this is exactly what, it means is to find, what are the passion areas or interest areas for different members. So it's been absolutely fabulous to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause. So, it's been very fascinating to look at his journey across different industries from, working for different companies and then, becoming an entrepreneur himself. And then, how he's now as an investor and mentoring and kind of, but of course, not to miss the most in terms of the Bhagavad Gita part and the other parts. So thank you very much for coming across and having this lovely chat. And thank you, Dinesh, for getting Sarvjit into the group. And from the Bay Area and from 1967 batch, we are going to jump across to Singapore and to 2019 batch. How many years? That is 33 plus 19, which means 53 minus 1 is equal to 52 years is the difference between the two. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Smarthveer, who's also part of GCC executive from Singapore. Smarth, are you there?
Yes. Thank you so much.
I have been, I've loved this guy because this guy after IIT was working with BCG. He gave up his BCG job and he's following his passion. He's gone to Singapore and he's working on his startup. But let him speak on his journey. And I also want to ask him, as 2019 batch, what is the value proposition that he sees in GCC? But more importantly, also the point that it's nice to say follow your passion, but passion doesn't always pay the bills. So how is Smarth? What are his thoughts? Over to you, Smarth. And also, Smarth heads, our special interest group on mental health. Mental health has become a big issue in the COVID terms. So Smarth will talk about two things today. One is his journey, which will also include the startup that he's currently started or whatever phase that is in. And number two, he will also tell us about what are his plans for mental health special interest group. Just to reiterate, we've already got 4 groups operational at various phases. There is a group being led by Manmohan on supply chain. There is a group which is being led by Vijay, which is on health and well-being. There's a group which is being led on mental health by Smarth. And there's a group which I'm leading for the time being, which is on ESG. So please give a big round of applause to Smarth and over to you, Smarth.
Thank you, Pradeep sir, for the kind words. I think over the past couple of months, one thing that I've definitely captured from you and the entire group is a lot of warmth. I think all of you have been very kind and guiding enough for the entire 3-4 months journey that I've had coming out of stealth mode. I think a lot of very senior folks, IT seniors have already spoken great things. So I'll keep it short for my journey. I think one thing that has always been there since my first year of college is to say, how do we create impact on the ground? And at the same time, how do we reimagine the future in different areas? Somewhere, EdTech and healthcare have been very core aspects in the way I have looked at things. And the only reason for that has always been that these are the two areas which, if you set the fundamentals right at the ground, can really have transformational impact across generations. So, for example, basically anywhere, any individual, you just give them the right education and they have the right health to do the hard work. I think then they can move mountains, and across generations, that really creates the impact. I think within these two sectors, from the first year of college, I found my niche, which was education, upskilling in a certain way. So that's been the consistent theme. I think one thing would have loved to share if Sumant Sinha sir were there. So basically, when I got my job at BCG, first 6 months in the job, I was awarded, and this is more from IITD perspective, I did some work in sustainability domain. So I went to his office. I said, look, I'm very inspired the way you have built your businesses. Now I want to work very closely with you and learn how to build business. I'm happy to give up my BCG job. That is how strong my desire is to actually learn and learn the business development. So I think that, and he was kind enough to say, hey, if you want to join, you can join, but I think you still need to give it a more detailed thought. Do you want to work with somebody to learn business, or do you want to learn hands-on? I think that was one trigger point for me. And since then, I think it's been similar journey. While BCG did some of the hypothesis testing, etc., and then finally, I think 1.5 years in the job, I left it, and things were not certain enough. But in the hindsight, I think it has been a very rewarding journey. So what I'm building today is basically helping companies to hire business talent effortlessly. And the core problem, if I were to say 3 big problems that we're solving for, is to make the process really efficient for them. So today, after CV shortlisting to round 1, there are a lot of misfits by the skill set. Essentially, CVs are not the right reflection of the skill set. Can we make pre-screening more holistic in nature so that there are no false positive and no false negative? I think second big problem we are solving for is making the entire screening process much more inclusive in nature, which is introducing the objectivity around the screening process so that no talented individual, so to say, misses out on any good job opportunity. So where we are at today from the business perspective, I think is basically one of the MBB, McKinsey BCG Bain is our client. We're working with them globally in the US and Europe offices, helping them screen 30,000 candidates, 500,000 in realized revenue. So from that perspective, I think that pretty much answers Pradeep sir's question on who pays the bill. I think initially there are very few areas where you can maintain your expenses, but I think the journey in itself is very rewarding. I think even when I look back today, I think one important aspect, the way I look at business and the product, is to say that somewhere one of my friends back in Jalalabad, so I come from a tier 3 city in Punjab, Jalalabad, Fazilka, Firozpur, some of you may know it that way. So I think one realization was a lot of people who are much more talented than me could not get the right opportunity to get to IIT. And the sole reason was they did not have access to the right guidance. I think today, when I look back with my product, the only thing I feel is if they get the right education, this product can help them to reflect their skills in the right way, or rather not restrict them to get a good job. So that's, I think, the real value I see in product. Dollar and all of those things are secondary. We still have very, very long journey. I've just started it. It's week 1 for me, essentially. I think, but I think answering the second question that Pradeep sir asked, which was around what, as 2019 grad, value prop I expect from GCC. I think going back to college, there's been one consistent theme, which is, and somewhere maybe some of us have been associated with BRCA or Rendezvous or Tryst in some perspective. I think it is that culture. When we are in the college, there is a very strong culture that you help anyone who's in need. Potentially, I think, and this is one culture that I've seen everywhere in IIT. And so the first time I went to US in my first year of college, I reached out to 2 IITians. I said, hey, I don't have money. I'm just a first year, right? I'm coming to US for a competition. Can you please allow me to stay with you? Both of them agreed. Rather, for my entire 10-day trip in Boston and New York, they sponsored, they did not let me spend a single dollar. All the meals, they took me out for meals. I got the room. I think that ways, it's that spirit where we have always helped each other. I think my expectation from GCC is that somewhere, I think we, again, maybe I am still to shift to that lens, but somewhere I see that that culture slightly goes away when we move away from the college. I think it's to bring that culture back, to say that we are all one. People like you, Pradeep sir, and your batch have done all the hard work. to really get us the brand name that we leverage and enjoy today in terms of getting the abroad internships and all of it. I think that's the only expectation to say, as part of GCC, how can we help each other to the extent that we are able to retain the brand name that you guys have created. I think that's the only way I would put it.
Thank you very much. Then what about your plans for the mental health SIG?
Sure. I think that's the most important component. That's where I would like to spend most of my time today. I think, as you explained, mental health is not just one tick mark now, not from academic or corporate standpoint to say that we have to fulfill it. It's become much more than that. And COVID has, in a way, given realization to all of us to say that it is a very core component. If that is not set right, irrespective how physically sound you are, there's limited that you can do. So I think from that perspective, what I would like to kickstart as some of the activities are building the right community. And by building the right community, what do I essentially mean? Yes. So today itself, I'll share a WhatsApp group link. And the intention of that group is basically that to get more and more individuals, IT alums, outside IT alums, if some of you may have connections with, to get to join that WhatsApp group where we will be doing some outreach activity from the GCC point of view. I think that's one just kicking start. The community aspect. And again, by WhatsApp, I think simple answer, let's not build the rocket ship. Let's start with the MVP. So WhatsApp group would be that MVP where we can engage with the community very actively and very easily, conveniently. I think the second is a major thing where a lot of the effort would go into. So next week, I would, and not on the call, but separately over the mail with everyone, I'll share a list of 10 speakers that we are going to cover in the next 3 months. And the engagement with these speakers is essentially going to be in 2 ways, podcast and webinars. So podcast, essentially, we would kickstart a GCC podcast on mental well-being. Essentially, very similar to the discussions we have today, some of the questions around what has been their journey through mental health. Have they seen any bad phases? I'm sure a lot of us have been through those phases, building businesses, doing jobs, in academia, etc., where we have gone through that lows. It's just putting out in front of everyone our vulnerabilities to say we have been there, we have faced that low, everyone does that, it's normal. And how did we overcome it? So I think it's, the podcast is intent to cover people across different domains, people from academia, people from industry, people from maybe startup world who build businesses. So broadly these 3, and I'll share the speaker list. So that's one. On the webinar, I think we are already packed for October and some part of November, but post that we would have one speaker as the schedule may allow, where these speakers would essentially talk about some of the best practices for mental health. And again, what I plan to do is I've already reached out to 5 mental health professionals. And these mental health professionals are doctors from AIIMS, doctors from Fortis, from Lady Hardinge Medical College, etc. And they're happy to contribute contribute with their time and help people to learn. I think because all of these sessions are anyways put out on YouTube in form of the links and all. So everyone would have access to these talks that we do during these 1-hour sessions. So I think from that perspective, just summarizing, second activity is going to be podcast and webinars covering about 10 speakers who share their journey through mental health and some of the mental health professionals. I think the third last component is kickstarting some content creation activity, and for which I also have Amartya on the call with me. Amartya is a 2021 IIT grad, and he's kindly agreed to help us in creating some of the mental health content along the way, kickstarting November 1st. So basically what we would do is, and Neeraj, you and I would work closely on that front. Basically, we would create some creatives which highlight how to be normal in the mental health. Again, capturing different perspective. The frequency is going to be twice a week. So from that perspective, over the next 3 months, the plan is to churn out at least 10 of these creatives where we could start engaging the community on mental health, and also at the same time increase the outreach of our social media, both LinkedIn and Facebook. So those are the three pillars. I think very quickly.
That's excellent to hear that, and I like the way you structured is, and that kind of fits into the pattern of community building in terms of one is growing the numbers, second is the engagement, and the third is going into value creation. So I look forward to activity, and I'm also very delighted to hear that you got a 2021 graduate. That is very nice. Martha, are you there in the call? I would like to see your face. I'd like to see, do you still have all the hair that we have all lost over the years? Martha, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Pradeep sir. So I am here and I'm really excited and actually feeling blessed to be a part of this group. And I'm the most recent alum, so being a part of this alumni group and hearing all your thoughts and talks is like really insightful for me.
Very nice, very nice. We will, pull you more into GCC, but which hostel were you in?
So it's a relatively new hostel. I don't know whether you might know about this. So it's Girnar hostel.
Oh, I've not even heard about it. Yeah. Okay. Great. Great to meet you. And we'll get you and through Smarth, I'm looking forward to your more active engagement. Back to Smarth for that, and Smarth. Now, good to hear about your plans. Now, I just want, for you to tell the group more about the startup and where is it at this particular point in time.
Sure. No, thank you so much for the opportunity, sir. So I think from the startup perspective, and shamelessly just putting all the plugins out there, I think what I've explained what we are doing, essentially what exact problem are we solving for is to say, and this is insight which I am sure most of you may have realized while building the business and hiring teams. CVs aren't really the true reflection of the skill set. And when you screen people, more often than not, there are 50 to 60% misfits by the skill set. Essentially, to put that into perspective, basically, if 200 people are shortlisted via the CV shortlisting software or manually, and they proceed with round one, after round one, only 140 would, the other way around, only 70 would make the cut to round two. And these 130 who have been filtered out are about 50 to 60% of them are misfit by the skill and not the fit criteria. And why did that problem happen in the first place? It was because either people wrote very flowery things, but they did not have this application standpoint of the skill sets. And B, maybe there were false negatives in the way these ATS systems usually work. And what this translates into is costing companies millions of dollars, because now all of these misfits in round one have to be interviewed, which shouldn't have been in the first place. I think second is also the time of the workforce. So what we are building is essentially a virtual interviewer, AI driven, which would assess people on their business skills. So if I were to put it in consulting structure, basically the first round of case interview that happens with a project leader, for example, in BCG or McKinsey, that is exactly what we are simulating via AI with this product. And I think from the market standpoint, this is a niche problem that I just explained, micro level. Macro level, what we are basically saying is there are about 400 to 500 million applicants every year in non-tech roles. And these are specifically entry level to mid-manager level. So from that perspective, there's huge cost and time that is being wasted on the misfits and interviewing all of those misfits. So that's, I think, the core money and time perspective problem we're solving for. Another, I think, fringe problem is to make sure that these interviews are objective enough to not have any bias, which is that all of these big companies, the main problem for them is not essentially shelling out some more extra money to interview some more people, rather ensuring that no good candidate gets filtered out because of a false negative perspective. So essentially with our tool, our product, these companies can really increase their screening funnel to go beyond the business schools or the target schools and basically screen anyone who's put in their CV and essentially assess them on the skill. So for example, if in a consulting interview, we were to assess people on problem solving, first principle thinking, that's exactly what this product does. Where does this fit into the entire value chain of recruitment? In the screening, what we are saying is alongside your CV shortlisting process, you ask all of those candidates who have applied to do a virtual interview with our bot. What you get is the CV shortlisted per the ATS. On top of it, what is the score that the candidate has got on a scale of 10 on the basis of their skill set? So I think it's to combine both of these things together and then say that you are making your screening process much, much more holistic. I think from the business direct implication, all of good things, false negative, false positive, inclusivity, diversity, etc. But what we are doing is essentially helping companies to save $100 and in return get $10. That's the kind of value prop that we are offering them, direct cost implication. And I think because it all, the major reason or the major issue that we have always faced or question that we've faced in the last 2 years is to say that people have tried it in the past and they have not succeeded. There are big companies out there like Hacker, and they've not made it big. What is it that has changed now? And solving for non-tech is also very subjective. It's not as binary as tech. So I think our take on that is that timing to solve for this market is today. Why? Because A, their technology has been disrupted in the last 2 years. All of the advanced AI systems, for example, GPT-3, which allows people to replicate this in-person interview using free text evaluation, etc., have been more recent advancement. And second is also because of COVID, both interviewer and interviewee mindset has changed. People could never imagine 5 years back to take virtual interviews. Those were very limited things. Now everybody had to move it. So from that perspective, there is much more acceptance and the technology allows people to build the solution. So it's just the perfect timing for both of it. From traction standpoint, I think the biggest challenge for us was to say that all of these big management consulting firms, they say that their only asset is human capital. That's literally what all they have. So if our product is used by these big consulting firms to get that human capital or to make a recruitment go no go decision basis our product, that is basically solving for the credibility of the product. Essentially, we are then selling eyes to Eskimos in a certain way, and therefore rest of the markets, solving for them become much easier. And that is where what we were doing in the last 6 months. And we have
where are you in the journey? Are you in a pre-revenue stage, or have you generating revenue? What are the major challenges? Is it market access? Is it delivery? Is it capital? What is the issue at the moment, or where are you?
Sure. So I think where we are at today is we have launched the product in US and Europe office of one of the McKinsey BCG Bain confidentiality. So I can't name the client, but from the contract perspective, we have a realized revenue of $500,000. So from that perspective, there's good enough traction to say that this market is huge. Now where we are at, and again, we have a full-time team in place. So me and my co-founder is ex-BCG principal. He left his job 2013. Since then, 9 years has been building HR companies. This is his second HR company. The last one was HR service startup. So that's the founding team, me and Eugene. Then we have 3 founding team members. One of them is a CTO, IIT Delhi person, and he's a second-time founder as well. The last startup that he did was in deep tech, and he exited that as a CTO. The second IIT Delhi person we have is a products guy, and he is leading our products vertical. He has very high experience on the product side, building conversational AI products. The third is a full-time team member on the strategy from Malaysia, and he has an experience of 1 year in VC and 1 year in early stage startup. So the team is rock solid. On top of it, what we have onboarded is a chief content officer, who's a former managing director and partner and recruitment head of one of the MBBs, Southeast Asia. So from that perspective, very solid team in every way that is needed. Now, where we are headed in the next 3 months, or rather, I think in the next 4 months, we are about to close our seed raise. We are raising 2 million at 10 to 15% dilution, depending on what is it really, a 6-month plan or 9th-month plan. And it's been 2 days that we officially came out of stealth, and we have already had 3 angel syndicates subscribe to 35% of the round. So that's where
wow, very good. Excellent story. So look, I am, see, this is what I am loving about this guy. 2019 means what, 2 years back? He's finished. He's already moved bases from, India to Singapore. He's left already, worked with BCG and left BCG and is on his own startup. And the startup also, he's got he's already got a great, customer that they're working with. And essentially a revenue of almost about $500,000, which is yet to be realized. But yeah, it is there. And he's already built such a good, team kind of a thing and onto capital. So we must, as GCC, let's take this as a test case and, let's see, that how do we help startups? I will definitely connect him with Sarvjit, because there are tremendous synergies in terms of what Sarajit can. But as a general, this thing, startup is a very, very important of our, community. So let's pick this up and let's see that how best we are able to, mentor or guide or, help Smarthveer. With that, please give a round of applause to Smarthveer. And I am delighted today to have a range from 1967, 1977, where me and some of my batchmates were there, 1987, where Sumant is from, and of course, instead of 2017, we had 2019. But a lovely span, lovely perspectives, and let me also tell you some of the conversations which are happening. There are going to be some more star-studded sessions coming your way. With this is Pradeep signing off from Sydney. It is 1:53 in the morning, but I have loved every moment of it. Have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, night. Enjoy your morning tea, afternoon lassi, evening glass of wine, whatever it is then. Till next GCC episode 13 on next Saturday. Bye for now.